6 years ago, the Queen's 90th birthday, there were 15 working royals. Those are members of the family who appear on behalf of the sovereign at events. Charles has previously suggested he wants to reduce that to just 8 senior members for financial and practical reasons. Now, Camilla is Queen Consort, so she is one of those 8 automatically.
A royal decree, freshly sealed and bearing the weight of King Charles and Princess Anne's signatures, has just shattered expectations across Britain. Gilded in tradition yet laced with quiet rebellion, the document was meant to affirm, yet it conspicuously omitted one name: Queen Camilla. Palace corridors are buzzing, aides are caught off guard, and whispers now echo louder than official statements. Was this a calculated move or a subtle strike within the firm's inner circle? One thing's clear: this was no accident. Buckle up, this royal twist is just getting started. Inside, the royal shakeup that left Queen Camilla in the shadows. It began like many royal matters do, quietly, formally, behind gilded palace doors. A royal decree, sealed with the authority of King Charles and Princess Anne, emerged from the heart of the monarchy. On the surface, it was another ceremonial reshuffle, but inside, it carried the weight of a crown in transition. Only 4 names graced the parchment: King Charles, Princess Anne, Prince William, and Princess Catherine. Absent, Prince Andrew, Prince Harry, and, most stunningly, Queen Camilla. What might have seemed like a clerical oversight was, in fact, deliberate. Palace insiders confirmed it without hesitation. This was no mistake. It was a decision steeped in strategy, silence, and symbolism. For centuries, queen consorts have been acknowledged in such decrees, not merely for tradition's sake, but to reflect continuity and ceremonial importance. Camilla's name being left out wasn't just notable, it was seismic. This quiet exclusion didn't happen overnight. It had been building behind the scenes, a slow unraveling of presence and power. While Camilla publicly shared the coronation stage with Charles just last year, her role has since grown dimmer, less central, more cosmetic, and now, with one inked decree, her formal significance has all but vanished. Behind the scroll's elegant calligraphy, however, lies a deeper story, one that can't be told in ink. The joint signature of Charles and Anne wasn't just procedural, it was symbolic. For while Camilla's influence may be fading, Anne's star is rising, not through spectacle, but through sheer, unshakable purpose. Princess Anne, born on August 15, 1950, never craved the spotlight. She wasn't groomed for glamour, she was forged in duty. From a young age, her character was marked by discipline, sharp intellect, and a deep-rooted sense of responsibility, traits that made her more respected than adored, more vital than visible. While tabloids fixated on Charles, Camilla, and the younger royals, it was Anne who quietly became the backbone of the monarchy. Over the years, her portfolio of responsibilities grew, without press releases or public fanfare. From state visits to military duties, Anne's schedule became the most grueling of any royal. Her approach was never about charm, it was about commitment, and as the monarchy teetered between tradition and modernity, Anne became its bridge. When hard decisions needed clarity, not comfort, Charles turned to Anne. Her loyalty wasn't loud, but it was unwavering. So when the time came to redraw the royal structure in response to growing public scrutiny and a rapidly shifting global view of monarchy, it was Anne who helped shape the path forward. The decree wasn't just a trimming of royal fat, it was a redirection of power. Fewer names, sharper roles, clearer messages. Charm gave way to credibility. Ceremonial status was exchanged for operational strength. Camilla, once a figure of personal stability for Charles, seemed increasingly misaligned with the future-facing vision the crown now seeks to embrace. Her attempts to fill the ceremonial shoes of Queen Elizabeth II were sincere, but in the eyes of many palace insiders, fell short of the stoic and scandal-free legacy left behind. Where Camilla offered warmth, Anne offered strategy. In a monarchy under pressure to modernize, warmth had become a luxury it could no longer afford. And the divide grew. It's said that Anne, often silent in public, voiced clear concern behind the scenes. She warned Charles, pushing Camilla too far into the spotlight could alienate loyal staff and erode public trust. The title of Queen Consort, carefully chosen by the late Queen Elizabeth herself, was never meant to be blurred. To Anne, it was not just a formality, it was a boundary. one she was determined to uphold. The omission of Camilla's name in the latest decree is more than paperwork. It is the quiet conclusion of a chapter and the subtle beginning of a new one. Crafted not with dramatic speeches, but with firm resolve and strategic intent. It signals a monarchy recalibrating itself for relevance, leaning on its most dependable force, Princess Anne. In the end, it's not just about a title removed or a name left off parchment. It's about the subtle shift of power within the palace walls, one that doesn't make headlines but moves history nonetheless. Camilla's exclusion speaks volumes, not through confrontation, but through quiet redirection. And Anne, her presence now looms larger than ever, not just beside the crown, but behind its every move. But this was only the beginning, because what followed, behind the scenes, between family, and in the eyes of the public, would test the monarchy in ways no scroll or seal could ever contain. The strategist behind the throne. And just like that, Camilla's name vanished, struck from a royal decree meant to define the future of the monarchy. The omission wasn't clerical, it was calculated. Carefully, purposefully, her title was left off a document that now carries the weight of a kingdom in transition. The signal wasn't loud, but it was deafening. Only 4 names stood: Charles, Anne, William, and Catherine. Those, insiders say, are the pillars the crown now leans on. And while the ink dried without public debate, behind palace doors, it had been Anne, resolute, measured, unyielding, who had shaped that final draft with an iron pen. Camilla had sensed the tide long before her name disappeared. Months earlier, she had stepped forward with new energy, embracing the spotlight in ways that once seemed impossible. More engagements, more patronages, a modern face beside the king. Many believed she was finally being welcomed fully into the fold, not as a consort in waiting, but as a partner in reign. Yet the more visible she became, the more silent the walls around her grew. Whispers turned to resistance. Her modern touch, her media-savvy presence, disturbed the delicately balanced traditions still mourning the loss of Queen Elizabeth II. And then came Anne. Where Camilla embraced evolution, Anne embodied endurance. She had no interest in headlines or charm offensives. Protocol was her domain. Loyalty to the crown, not to individuals, was her compass. Within that conviction, friction brewed. There were subtle standoffs, scheduling conflicts, disagreements over precedence, opposing visions for ceremonial appearances. Courtiers stopped pretending all was smooth. The rift, though always wrapped in polite formalities, ran deep. Behind the scenes, a new title began to attach itself to Anne, the strategist behind the throne. Not officially, of course, she would never claim such a moniker, but palace aides knew its truth. It was Anne's voice shaping decisions, her presence guiding direction. She had become not just a figurehead, but the monarchy's quiet architect, stabilizing the crown through its most uncertain chapter. That rise, however, came at a cost. For every inch Anne moved forward, Camilla stepped back, willingly or not. Her exclusion wasn't sudden, but it was systematic. She no longer attended key planning meetings. Her office operated on the periphery. Decisions were finalized before they reached her ears. Her once constant presence beside the king began to seem symbolic rather than strategic. The same halls where her voice once echoed now answered with silence. And King Charles, the man who stood beside her through decades of public scorn and personal controversy, now stood at a crossroads only the crown could create. He loved her deeply, without question. But as sovereign, he faced a choice that had little room for sentiment. As Britain's expectations sharpened and internal pressures mounted, Charles made the hardest decision of his reign: to prioritize legacy over loyalty. No press release announced the change, no cameras caught the moment, but the message was delivered all the same, in what was left unsaid, in the titles withheld, in the silence that followed. And while Camilla still smiles in public, those close to her say she understands. But is the crown she once stood beside now moving on? Quietly, strategically, and without looking back. Keep watching. Camilla's silent fall and the rise of royal reckoning. Behind the splendor of the crown and the carefully choreographed waves from palace balconies, power often moves in silence, behind locked doors, in ink on parchment, and in decisions made not with love, but with legacy in mind. The case of Queen Camilla's sudden erasure from the monarchy's future was no different. The world saw a pen stroke, but inside, it was a storm of old resentments, royal strategy, and one scandal too large to forget. For years, Camilla had clawed her way into public acceptance. From the sidelines of controversy, she rose. First the outsider, then the princess consort-in-waiting, until eventually, in 2022, crowned Queen Consort.
The British monarch has given her blessing for Prince Charles' wife Camilla to be called Queen Consort.
Her transformation was anything but smooth. It was layered with resistance, public backlash, and constant reminders of a past that wouldn't let go. But in the end, she had won Charles's loyalty, and a title that many once thought impossible. Yet, titles in the royal world are as fragile as the trust they're built on. What many didn't know was that her elevation to Queen Consort had come at a cost, one wrapped in another royal scandal, the kind that didn't just stain names, but stained legacies. According to royal expert Christopher Anderson, the turning point came when Prince Andrew's involvement in the Jeffrey Epstein scandal exploded. Desperate to contain the damage, Queen Elizabeth II quietly paid a private settlement from her own funds, money that, had it remained untouched, would have eventually belonged to Charles. Charles was furious, not just at the scandal or the payout, but at the principle of it. In that moment, the tension between mother and son shifted into negotiation. If his inheritance could be used to clean up Andrew's mess, then he, too, could make a request. Camilla would no longer be princess consort, she would be queen. Queen Elizabeth agreed. It was a quiet deal, one scandal wrapped in another, a mother trying to shield the monarchy, a son bargaining for the woman he loved. But the crown is a living thing, its needs change, and when Queen Elizabeth passed, those old agreements suddenly felt outdated. Public mood had shifted again. Parliament was pressing for reform. The press asked hard questions. And social media. It became a battleground. Was Camilla truly the face the monarchy needed now? Inside the palace, Princess Anne had already made up her mind. Practical and unsentimental, she pushed for a clean monarchy, streamlined, efficient, and free from reminders of past controversy. In her view, Camilla's presence complicated that image, not because of who she was, but because of what she symbolized. For days, Charles struggled. He reread drafts of the royal decree listing the core royals who would represent the crown. Camilla's name floated in a gray area, never removed, never confirmed. Staff described him as restless, torn between love and legacy. But Anne didn't flinch. The monarchy must be respected, she reportedly said, not remembered for its mistakes. Eventually, the decision was made. There was no statement, no announcement, just one signature. With it, Camilla's name was quietly removed from the document shaping the future of the crown. Her title remained, but her presence did not. When the leak hit the press, chaos followed. "Queen no more," headlines screamed. Camilla became the center of a firestorm she hadn't expected. One faction praised the move as justice, for Diana, for tradition. Another called it cruel, a betrayal of a woman who had paid every possible price for a place at the table, only to be silently dismissed. Polls revealed a nation divided, but one truth cut through the noise. Power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, and in that whisper, a queen disappeared, a royal silence that echoed worldwide. And as the ink dried on the decree that quietly pushed Camilla aside, the reaction was anything but quiet. From the boulevards of Paris to the newsrooms of New York, the decision sparked a global wave of speculation, not just about a queen consort's role, but about the very future of the royal family itself. If Charles, who had once defied tradition to be with Camilla, couldn't shield her now, what did that silence really signify? Was this a calculated move to preserve the crown's image, or the first crack in a relationship now bending under pressure? International commentators dissected every angle, questioning whether Camilla would now retreat from the public eye or defiantly hold her ground. In the tabloids, familiar patterns emerged. Camilla's name was grouped with royal women who had once stood close to power, then fallen: Sarah Ferguson, Princess Diana, and Meghan Markle. Each had once symbolized hope or scandal, now remembered for how swiftly they were cast aside. Was Camilla next? In that company, her removal no longer seemed like a quiet edit. It felt like exile. Yet beneath the frenzy of headlines and talk show chatter, a deeper anxiety was spreading. If a queen consort, once legitimized by both the late Queen Elizabeth and the crown itself, could be erased so quietly, then no title seemed safe. The monarchy, in revealing its ruthlessness, exposed just how far it might go to survive. This wasn't just about one name left off a page. It was a warning. The palace had shown its hand, and in doing so, hinted that even more upheaval might be on the horizon. The public watched, waiting, not just for Camilla's next move, but for what came next, from behind the gilded doors of the palace. But what secret shifts are unfolding behind palace doors as the four key figures quietly redraw the lines of royal power? Stay tuned. The core four and the crown's silent revolution. And yet, the real message wasn't whispered. It was printed in royal ink. With Camilla's name erased from the decree, the monarchy quietly confirmed its new blueprint. A future ruled by just four figures: King Charles, Princess Anne, Prince William, and Princess Catherine. No longer a sprawling web of extended duties and distant cousins, the crown has shifted its center of gravity. This is no longer the monarchy of yesteryear. It is a recalibrated machine built on strategy, optics, and survival. Behind the palace walls, this newly forged Core 4 is redrawing centuries-old lines with careful precision. Charles's long-held vision of a streamlined monarchy, once dismissed as an idea too radical for tradition, has now taken root. Every key engagement, from foreign visits to national ceremonies, is being consolidated under this elite circle. It's not punishment, it's protection. In an era where symbolism is scrutinized and every royal wave can trigger 1,000 headlines, trimming the royal family isn't about exclusion, it's about preservation. As Camilla quietly recedes from roles once central to her identity, her duties aren't left idle. Kate, already beloved by the public, is stepping into those spaces with ease, while Anne, ever the tireless workhorse, continues to embody the monarchy's executive spine. This inner circle isn't ceremonial, it's functional, and with it comes a cold efficiency that has no room for outdated sentiment. Titles granted in more forgiving times are now being reconsidered, including honors still linked to Camilla. What was once her hard-won progress is now quietly dissolving in the name of evolution. Constitutional tweaks are already being discussed, and if enacted, they could lock this transformation into place permanently. For better or worse, the monarchy is no longer just reacting, it is recalibrating for permanence. Queen Camilla pushed to the sideline. And just like that, a woman who once stood at the center of royal transformation now watches from the shadows as her name fades quietly from the institution she once helped shape. As the monarchy charges forward under a bold, slimmed-down model, Queen Camilla's role is no longer carved in marble. It's being chipped away with quiet precision, not through scandal or outcry, but through careful strategy. Titles, once symbols of honor, have been reassigned. Ceremonial duties now fall under the control of Princess Catherine, whose rising influence is matched only by the warmth she draws from the public. This shift, long envisioned by King Charles and Princess Anne, now lives in action. Behind the palace walls, the monarchy is remaking itself, leaner, sharper, built to survive the demands of a skeptical age. Camilla's exclusion from the most recent royal decree sent a clear signal. Survival now outweighs sentiment. Gone is the sprawling tapestry of distant cousins and ceremonial handshakes. What remains is a concentrated force: Charles, Anne, William, and Catherine, tasked with guiding the crown into a new era. Camilla's absence isn't just logistical, it's personal, and yet even in silence, she hasn't surrendered. Within the walls of Clarence's house, private meetings now replace public appearances. Her schedule, once brimming with garden parties and state dinners, has turned blank. Publicly, exhaustion is the narrative. Privately, insiders suggest something far more deliberate. Camilla, they whisper, is weighing her next move with care. There's talk of hand-picked journalists, of letting her story surface not in anger, but in elegance. A slow leak, rather than a shout. If this happens, it will be a direct challenge to the very core that pushed her out. But the strain isn't just external. Behind the scenes, her once indestructible bond with Charles has been tested. The man who once braved public scorn to defend her now finds himself split, loyal to his wife, yet bound to the institution, reshaping itself beneath his feet. Anne's growing dominance and William's quiet support for a streamlined future have only added to the emotional strain. And then there's the frost with William and Catherine.
What it is.
What it is, exactly, and how we can support not only ourselves but each other as well.
Once amicable, even warm, those relationships have cooled. As Kate takes over key public duties with grace and acclaim, Camilla's absence becomes more than symbolic. It's structural. Every smiling appearance from the Princess of Wales only reinforces what Camilla no longer is: central. Still, not everyone believes Camilla is retreating. Some in her circle argue she's simply waiting, playing the long game. They see a woman who's endured worse and returned stronger. Whether she chooses to reclaim her voice subtly or steps back in quiet defiance, her decision could shape more than her own future. It could determine the balance of the monarchy itself. Because when power shifts in silence, the loudest move may be the one no one sees coming. But what if Camilla's silence isn't retreat, but strategy? Could her quiet return tilt the monarchy's future? Stay tuned to find out. A queen without a throne. Camilla's quiet reckoning. But as the monarchy adjusted its crown, one name vanished from the scrolls, not with thunder, but with silence. And that silence said everything. Queen Camilla's absence from the royal decree wasn't an oversight. It was intentional. Once central to royal duties alongside King Charles, her name has been quietly removed, signaling a power shift. Once a controversial yet resilient figure, Camilla now finds herself increasingly sidelined. Though she hasn't bowed out, insiders say she's retreating from the spotlight. Clarence's house is quieter, her schedule nearly empty, and where her name once marked royal events, silence now speaks volumes. Insiders suggest the shift is part of a broader strategy, an intentional narrowing of the monarchy's public face, with Charles, Princess Anne, William, and Catherine now carrying the crown's weight.
I've been actually trying to keep quiet about reaching 3/4 of a century.
Camilla's absence sharpens their spotlight, and for the firm, that's a visual win, a streamlined image of resilience, unity, and renewal. In a post-scandal landscape, public trust is brittle, and the monarchy needs its most unblemished figures out front. But this reshaping of power comes at a personal cost. Behind palace walls, the emotional toll of Camilla's quiet removal is said to weigh heavily. Charles, once willing to risk everything for her, now finds duty forcing him to step back. Though they appear united in public, insiders speak of growing tension and distance, especially as Anne's sway grows and William's vision sharpens. Camilla's ties with William and Catherine, once courteous and even warm, have grown frostier. Catherine, stepping with ease into roles once earmarked for Camilla, represents a future the public embraces more readily. William, ever focused on protecting the institution, is believed to support the reshuffling that left Camilla on the periphery. It is not personal, it's strategic, yet for Camilla, it's deeply personal, and still, she remains. Not in the spotlight, but not entirely in the shadows either. She's said to be considering her next move, not a grand announcement or bitter farewell, but perhaps a quiet, deliberate retreat, framed as self-care or age-appropriate scaling back. Or maybe, as some believe, she's simply waiting, watching, choosing her moment not to disappear, but to re-emerge, on her own terms, in her own time. Because Camilla has never been the type to go quietly. Her journey to the throne was not inherited. It was fought for, inch by inch, through scandal, exile, and eventual acceptance. And that makes her absence now feel all the more striking. The monarchy may be realigning, but Camilla's legacy, unfinished and unresolved, hangs in the balance. As the ink settles on the papers that left her name behind, one truth becomes clear. This is not just the story of a queen stepping back. It's the story of a crown being reshaped, of loyalty tested, and of a woman who may yet redefine her place in history before the royal curtain falls for good. But what do you think really happened behind palace walls that made Queen Camilla vanish from royal duties without a word? Was it strategy, betrayal, or something more? We'd like to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like and subscribe.